endorsing the use of certain brands. This is some of my credentials as a biosafety officer. I received the Malaysian Advanced Biosafety Officer training back in 2013 and have been serving as a national trainer since then. I'm also a registered biosafety professional with the Malaysian Biosafety and Biosecurity Association, and I hold 4 professional certifications under the International Federation for Biosafety Associations. I'll encourage you to have a face mask ready for some action. Coronavirus, basically, I still hear somebody's mic on. Can you please check your mic and switch it off? Otherwise, admin will have to mute them on behalf. Okay, this is the size of a coronavirus. It's 0.1 micron. The bacteria is a bit larger at 0.5 micron. And you have the 2.5 micron particles here. These 2.5 micron particles is basically the size of your hair particle. And the red blood cell is about 7 microns.
Mission to fight for good. When crazy intentions go wild, these deer must be on their planet powers. So gear up and sound the voice. And don't miss the new adventures of the Deer Squad. Next Monday to Friday, our big 2 year. Would you like to spend?
Admin, can you see who's still talking? Can you help to mute them? And what I really want you to know here is the size of 0.3 micron, and it's also 3 microns. Okay, you remember the size of 0.3 micron and 3 microns. The difference is 10 times. And first of all, the face mask and respirator material. You probably have seen they label the face mask, the material is made from non-woven fabric. Basically, it's also known as meltdown polypropylene. The same material that is being used to make many lab plastics, okay? The polypropylene resin is melted and then sprayed at high speed onto a roller, and you polymerize here and it's being rolled into fabric. So it's called the melt-blown polypropylene. The filtration mechanism is important. First, you can capture things by Brownian movement. Particles can move around and hit the fiber and being stuck on it, or under direct interception, gravity settling, basically it drops there, electrostatic attraction, the graph on the right side is the graph of efficiency versus particle size. The diffusion, electrostatic initial impaction, and also interception. Basically, when everything works fine, the total efficiency is actually quite high. But if you see the label here, when a new filter loses the charge mechanism, the efficiency drops down significantly. So you will see that electrostatic plays a really important role in the filtration mechanism. If you use the respirator or face mask over a prolonged period of time, it may lose its electrostatic attraction and the efficiency will drop over time. Mask selection, I'm sure we have been bombarded with many different brands, many different masks, and a lot of different claims for mask, surgical mask. And what we really want to see is this. Like this one is ASTM level 2, and the other one is ASTM level 3, and it says the highest. If price is not an issue, you probably want to choose level 3, which is the highest. You'll find the higher the level, the better it is. But let's look at the science behind. And face masks, before the pandemic, most of the face masks, they are probably this type. And you see that it's not labeled as surgical mask, but face mask. It is 3-ply and is made from the same material. ASTM level 2, what is this ASTM anyway? Let's look at some of the test requirements and the standards. If you purchase a surgical mask that has been certified to the European standards, they will be using the EN 14683 2019. And if it's American standard, then it's ASTM F 2000-19 standard. Okay, the China one is also here if you want to refer to it. But for most of my talk, I'll be focusing on ASTM rather than the EN standard. You will see that there's one thing that people normally look at is the bacterial filtration efficiency, and it's rated at 95% or greater. For level 2 and level 3, it's rated at more than 98%. So is this more than 95% the same as N95? We shall see later. And the particle filtration efficiency of 95%. And let's look at the synthetic blood here. It must pass 80 millimeter mercury. And for this one, pass at 120 millimeter mercury and pass at 160 millimeter mercury. Remember that the label of this item is called surgical face mask. It was designed to be used in a surgery ward. So if you are a nurse doing a phlebotomy, taking blood from the arm, this is called venipuncture, and the pressure in your vein is around 80 millimeter mercury. If you are wearing this face mask level 1, ASTM level 1 face mask, and somehow something went wrong and the blood spurt out from the vein onto your face, it will be shooting at you at 80 millimeter mercury. And at level 1, it will stop the blood from seeping through or passing through, hitting your face. For level 2, which normally we can find this in the pharmacy and elsewhere, is rated higher. So it must withstand and hold blood spurt shooting at you at 120 millimeter mercury in case you have severed an artery during a procedure. Okay, and in the real surgery, if you have severed something and someone having higher blood pressure than normal, the level 3 will offer you greater protection. Other than that, there isn't anything more that ASTM level 3 can provide other than the protection against liquid. Bacterial filtration efficiency. There will be agar plaques being loaded here. And then you see that the piece of cloth or face mask will be sealed here. And aerosolized Staph aureus will be bombarded against this face mask, and anything that captures underneath will be calculated for the bacterial efficiency, filtration efficiency, or BFE. Particle filtration efficiency is tested in a very similar way. For face masks, we use 3 microns sodium chloride aerosol to bombard the face mask. And you can see that this piece of face mask is also sealed in between 2 pieces of steel barrel here. So it forms a great seal on this piece of respirator, in which you may not achieve this kind of seal when you wear a surgical mask. Blood penetration test is done as such. The face mask is immobilized and sealed on this machine, and then blood at different velocity will be shoot at it. And if it's rated at level 1, again, it must withstand the pressure of 80 millimeter mercury. If it's rated higher, then it should withstand the pressure of 120 or 160 millimeter mercury. Can you reuse a surgical mask? The guidelines, it should be evidence-based, and some guidelines is given without any evidence. And what did the manufacturer say? It says, if you want to read everything here, the product is not designed to protect you from harmful dust or gas. And the one that has been highlighted here, do not store in direct sunlight or in places with high temperature and humidity. So this will probably be inside your car. This product is intended for single use. So the manufacturer or no manufacturer at all will suggest that you can wash it or you can reuse it. But sometimes we do want to reuse it. And I do see people putting the surgical mask inside a Ziploc bag and reuse it at a later date. That one will probably be a little bit dangerous, because in a sealed condition, fungus or whatever that is captured from your breath or your saliva, it can grow. So it may not be a good idea. If you really want to reuse, it's probably best to keep it inside a well-ventilated paper bag. Double masking recommendation. Fauci was probably the first person who introduced this double masking. And the question is, should we wear the surgical mask inside and the cloth mask outside, or the other way around? Let's look at some science. This research letter was published quite recently, April 16, 2021, the fetid filtration efficiency of double masking during the COVID-19 pandemic. This is the result. So I'll just introduce you briefly here. The procedural ear-loop mask, a surgical mask is also known as procedural mask, and they tested a single masking and a double masking and on the fetid filtration efficiency. And the single mask, somehow it offers protection from 43% to 62%. And when they put on the second layer of identical mask, it increased briefly. And the difference is not much. So it's between 4 to 14%. Then they further test it on cloth mask. The cloth mask, this one is they call the Hans cotton ear-loop mask. Then they tested on the procedural mask worn over. Basically, the surgical mask is worn outside. And then the second time, they will use the procedural mask worn under, that is inside. And they found that when you wear the surgical mask underneath, that is directly in contact with your skin, the efficiency is higher. And if you use a cotton bandana, if you wear a cotton bandana, and then the surgical mask on top of it, you get about 55%. And the procedure mask worn under, you get 77%. And now you have achieved a slightly increase in efficiency. And they also tried to use polyester gaiter. When the procedure mask is worn over the gaiter, you have about 60% filtration efficiency. And then the procedure mask worn under, you get a whooping 81%. And you can see that if you compare the same material, double same material, it's probably around 10% average. But if you use a cotton earlobe mask, you increase it to 20%, bandana, 33%, and gaiter, 40%. Okay, and the reason is basically all this additional layer, it helps to promote a better fit to your face. Innovation that improves surgical mask fit. I'm sure by now we will realize that many times when we inhale and exhale, the air basically escapes through the nose and also from the side. And there are people who created a novel origami-like kind of method to tie the face mask so that it fits to your face better. So that will probably increase the surgical mask fit. The more, it doesn't mean it's barrier. So I received this morning from WhatsApp. The more it may not be barrier, it becomes difficult for you to breathe. And you may not last very long with too many layers. Okay. Then what did science say about face shield? There's a recent article also, experimental efficacy of the face shield and the mask against emitted and potential received particles. This one, they are using two mannequins. One fogger, they attach a fogger, and then they place the mannequins 25 centimeters apart, and they aerosolize the particles at 0.35 microns against a receiver. So RE is receiver, EM is emitter. They have tried different configuration, and these are basically a bit graphic. Emission without any PPE. They tested out emission with receiver protection. Basically, the person who receives is either using a face mask or only a face shield, and different combinations. Okay. Emission with emitter protection, emission with double protection, both sides protected. And their finding is the wearing of a protective device by the emitter alone reduced the level of received particles by 96.8% for both the mask and face shield. So wearing mask and face shield, it will significantly reduce the emission of particles. And when both the emitter and receiver mannequins had wore a face shield, the protection allows for better result in our experimental condition. 98% reduction for the face shield versus 97.3% for the face mask. Okay. So remember that the face mask itself, it was created to protect others from you, not the other way around. And this one basically supports if the emitter, the person who has been infected with COVID, if he's wearing a face mask and also a face shield, it will greatly reduce the amount of viral particle being emitted out. Let's go to respirators. There are different types of respirator that you can find in the world. You have a single-use half face, such as this. This is a single-use half face, and a powered air purifying respirator. There are different Max around. This is from Max Air. The more common one that people use is 3M because the marketing is much better here. and the availability of stock. We would like you to look at this too. This is the 8233, the NIOSH certified N100 respirator with exhalation valve. And this one is the VFlex 9105 with no exhalation valve. The issues with valve respirators, it offers user protection only, and exhaled air may contaminate the surrounding. So it is not advisable for exhalation valve respirator to be used when you need to protect others. During the initial part of the pandemic, CDC and NIOSH US, they did not recommend the use of this respirator for obvious reason. And you will also find medical grade or surgical grade respirators. All these medical and surgical grade respirators will never come with a valve like this. If you have a lot of stock, what should you do? I mean, if you have many respirators with valve, can you still use it? The recommendation was to tap it from the inside. Okay, and they tap it on the inside. And one recommendation also is to mask over. This I will discuss later because it depends on how you put another layer of mask over. It may affect the respirator fit. Filtering fast-pitch respirator with exhalation valve, measurement of filtration efficiency to evaluate their potential for source control. So even without mitigation, that means this respirator that has been tested, they did not seal the valve. And they shows that the respirator with exhalation valve can reduce the 0.35 micron particle emission more consistently than surgical mask, procedural mask, and fat cloth face covering or fabric from t-shirt. However, the 0.35 micron particle emissions are not expected to be lower for every model. With mitigation, basically it means they disabled the valve by using a Celotap, surgical tap, or ECG tap. 0.35 microns particle emission can be limited to 5%. Okay, so they said what they are trying to say is you can actually use the valve respirator, but this statement is only true for the model tested. So these are the model that has been tested for the 9211 for 3M that we commonly use here. The ATEM 4030, we have it here also. So the reusable half-fast respirator is not in this list and should not be used during the time of pandemic. Ear loop versus headband respirator. I get this statement from NIOSH. Currently, there is no NIOSH approved products with ear loops, as NIOSH approved N95 have headbands. Furthermore, limited assessment of ear loop designs indicate difficulty achieving a proper fit. You may find many N95s around or claiming to be equivalent of N95. They are not 100% or they are not NIOSH approved. Okay, because ear loops, it depends on the strength of the ear loops, the facial feature. It may not provide a better or a good fit when you use the respirator. And there are different respirators available. 3 classes of respirators. The N series, the R series, and the P series. And the N stands for not resistant to oil, meaning we use the N series in the condition where there is no oil. And under this N, you have the 95% filtration efficiency, 99% and 99.97% of airborne particles. And the R series, it is actually quite rare to find. It's somewhat resistant to oil, and it also have a similar rating at 95, 99% efficiency, and the 99.97%. P series is the same, strongly resistant to oil, oil-proof, 95, 99, and 100. Okay, very similar. Those that have the N100, R100, and P100, they are known as HEPA filter, similar to the quality that you can find in your air purifier at home. And when do you use R? If you generate a little bit of oil aerosol, then you can use R. But if you are working in a condition where oil is consistently being aerosolized, like in an oil rig or anywhere similar, you should use a P series. Okay, and if you are following the public health guys out for fogging to control mosquito population, the P series should be worn instead of the N because of the oil resistance. Respirator standards. There are so many types of standards available. Different countries will have different standards. N95 being the most common, and the FFP2, the European standard. The KN95 now becoming very popular. The P2, Korea First Class, DS2, and PFF2. This will probably be overwhelming, but you roughly need to know the differences between all these respirator standards. But what you really want to know here is the filtration performance. The N95, it will specify the performance of more than 95%. This more than 95% is not tested on 3 microns particle. It is tested on 0.3 microns particle. So the bacterial filtration efficiency stated on the surgical mask, it cannot be equated as an N95, okay? Because 0.3 and 3 micron is 10 times difference. And the European standard, you have the FFP2, the 94%. The K95 is also more than 95%. So theoretically, we should select something that's higher. But bear in mind that it is more than 95%. Most of these respirators, they overachieve the minimum filtration rate. But the important thing about respirator use is the correct fit. Surgical mask and N95 respirator, what are the differences? The testing and approval is for surgical mask is cleared by FDA, but N95 is approved by NIOSH. Intended purpose and use for surgical mask is fluid resistant and provide the wearer protection against large droplets, splashes, and spray of bodily or other hazardous fluid. Protect the patient from the wearer's respiratory emission. And N95, it says reducing wearer's exposure to particles, including small particle aerosols and large droplets. There is a face seal fit. The surgical mask, it offers loose fitting, you know this. And N95 respirator, it offers tight fitting. Fit testing requirement is a no for surgical. N95 is a yes. User seal check requirement is a no for surgical mask, and it's a yes for N95. I will not go through the rest. If you have a, I'll stop sharing for now. If you have a face mask with you, you can wear it. Like a face mask. Let's look at what is sealed. And when we don a face mask like this, you will expect that breathing is quite simple. It doesn't give you a lot of resistance. You can wear this for hours without feeling any fatigue. But if you just make a triangle and then you press against your face, and then you inhale and exhale, make sure it forms a good seal. You will find that there's a resistance when you try to inhale and also exhale. Okay? If you try this now or try this later, you realize that there's a 95% bacterial efficiency, 95% or higher bacterial filtration efficiency for a face mask, and the 95% particle filtration efficiency for the face mask or surgical mask is not the same as the N95. And most of the time, when we use surgical mask, there's a leakage from the nose and also on the side. And what I said here, the leakage occurs around the edge of the mask when user inhales. And for N95, when properly fitted and donned, minimal leakage occurs around edges of the respirator when user inhales. Respirator use is regulated. For surgical mask, it is not regulated. So in the proper use of respirator, there must be medical evaluation. Not everybody can use respirator. Certain people with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, they may not be able to use one. Some people who may develop asthma while using respirator, they cannot use. So by right, you need to be cleared by a medical professional, especially a respiratory physician, before you can start to use a respirator. And secondly is a formal training. In a place, especially in a hospital or in the vet training school, there should be a formal training for respirator use, at least annually, because the use of respirator is probably not a common sense, although you can watch a lot of YouTube movies on how to use a respirator online. And the third point here is fit testing. Respirator use should be fit tested to your face. Most of the time, for employer point of view, they will buy one single model and then expect everyone to use it. In an institution with proper respirator program, then they will not do that, because everybody has different facial feature. How well a respirator fits the individual wearer is determined by a test called fit testing. It helps determine how well the wearer is protected from given hazards. When to fit test? Initial selection of respirator. You see a lot of different respirator models in the market. Even 3M alone, they have a big list of respirator model. And if you look carefully, some of them comes with S size, some S, some L. So they have custom made all this for people with different facial feature. If you change PPE model or brand, you need to be fit tested, and it should be part of a routine health surveillance program. when you physiologically or anatomically change, especially the facial characteristic, rapid weight gain or weight loss, or when it's mandated by regulatory or employers' health and safety policy. Factors affect respirator fit. So, wearer follow manufacturer's user instruction. For every piece of respirator, it should come with instruction on how to use it properly. The wearer should be well shaven, no beard. Presence of facial jewelry should not be present if it affects the seal, the individual size and shape, clothing, and other PPEs. I put here goggles. So if someone has been fit tested with a respirator, let's say this model, and then suddenly he needs to use a goggle, this fit testing certificate or certification no longer valid, because you can see this goggle is pressing on the respirator and it may affect the respirator fit. So if someone is to use a respirator with a goggle, he or she must wear both and being fit tested together. The facial style, this has been released by CDC NIOSH, and a clean shaven face is the best because the respiratory sealing surface is here, if you can see that. This is the sealing surface. If you have grown beard, then you are not allowed to use respirator. There is no point to provide respirator fit testing for you because it will fail. And air from the outside, from the inside, it will escape through your beard. Okay, so they have recommended if you have a little bit of soul patch, side whiskers, is okay. And wet noodles is interesting. The English style, this one cannot. The Zorro style is okay. So it really depends. So for whatever reason, if someone cannot shave their beard, then they cannot use an N95 respirator. Okay. Face shape changes over time. How frequent do we need to have fit testing? Basically, a program by NIOSH. This is the same person. You will see that the first visit was plump, and then the second visit, he loses a bit of weight. The third visit, a bit different. Fourth visit, it's kind of slimmed down a lot. And you can see that over time, people's facial feature and the shape change. So when this happens, you need to do a fit testing. Fit seal check versus fit test. Fit seal check, most of the time we perform seal check before we start work. After we don a respirator. This is conducted by user each time he puts on PPE. It's a good practice that gives an indication that the PPE is positioned correctly on the wearer. And this is the responsibility of the user. It shows crude fitting errors because you are supposed to try it out and see whether air actually escapes from the side or from the nose. So you should be able to feel this. And the guidance provided in the user instruction. Fit test is conducted by a competent person and is conducted each time a new model of PPE is selected and it's a responsibility of the employer. I took this from the box of portable respirator, the V-Flex. They will teach you how to do it, how to put on, and I won't be able to show you how to put it on and do the test right now. But one common error that many people do is this strap. The upper strap is placed 45-degree top. It should not be resting on your ear, okay? You can use a respirator for a single shift for 8 hours continuous. And if this thing is resting on your ear, you may develop some ear pain later. Okay? It must never touch your ear. And you will try to fit your nose clip using 2 fingers rather than a single hand, okay? And you blow air out after you use it and see whether there is any air escaping through the nose clip or the side or the bottom, okay? This one is based on your own feel. Types of fit tests available. One is quantitative, another one is qualitative. Quantitative, they will use aerosolized aerosol and see how much particles actually escape through the mask. And the qualitative is basically based on yes, no, and uses your test bud. There are 2 chemicals that we can use. One is Bitrex or dinatorium benzoate, and another one is saccharin. Bitrex, like the name suggests, is very bitter, okay? And this is an example of a hood used for quantitative fit testing. You see that the lady here, she wears a respirator. She gets comfortable with it for a couple of minutes, and then we'll put on this hood. And in this nebulizer, we'll put in Bitrex or saccharin, and we will saturate the air inside with Bitrex or saccharin. And she is to perform some activities and breathe through the mouth with the tongue out. So if you can test the bitterness, basically the air actually enters through the seal area. There is no fitting. If you cannot test anything, then the Bitrex particles has been filtered by the mask material. Then there is a fit. So the selection of saccharin and Bitrex basically depends on the person's sensitivity. People who consume a lot of sugar and synthetic sugar will have problem testing saccharin because of reduced sensitivity to sweetness. So most of the time, we'll just use Bitrex. So there are 7 steps in respirator fit testing. First is you breathe properly after you put on the respirator. Second, you breathe deeply. Then you move your head side to side. You move your head up and down. You're talking or read a text. There's a standard text for you to read to measure, to simulate a different facial feature when you talk. And then you bend over. All these movement, if at any one step you started to test the bitterness, then the fit test would fail. You can either retest after a while, or you need to change to a new respirator model. Respirator fit testing is not available in many places of the world. And can you actually just buy a respirator and use it? So you can just select one reputable brand, buy, and hope that it protects you. Let's look at what the science have to say. Racial differences in respirator fit testing. A pilot study of whether American fit panels are representative of Chinese faces. So they have tested quite a number of people. And what they have shown is the respirator made using the American fit panels did not fit the facial feature of the Chinese. So around 12% to 35% of Chinese subjects fall outside the range derived from the American panels. So if you just purchase a respirator without and use it without fit testing, there's a good chance between 12% to 35% that our Asian face will fail to protect you from the aerosols particles outside. I need help for someone to mute KJL. The mic is on. Okay. Evaluation of a large-scale quantitative respirator fit testing program for healthcare worker survey results. So they have tested 3,707. Sorry, they have tested 4,000 plus healthcare workers, and 4,000 plus, on 82.9%, were successfully fitted with the first tested respirator. So what does it mean? In our local setting, if the employer purchased in bulk one single model of respirator, it's a high chance that only 83% can be successfully fitted to the first respirator. Okay, there is no one size fits all. Then the rest will be wearing the respirator, but it will only function as a surgical mask because of the leakiness. And here it says 12.3% requires testing with second model, and 4.8% requires the third or more tests. So there will be a minority of people, around 10 to 30%, who will not fit to one single respirator size or model. Here I highlighted here also Asians, excluding those from South and Central Asia, had the highest failure rate of 16%. So again, they are mentioning that if the design of respirator is for using the American fit panel, then the failure rate should be around this. Okay. This is interesting. The healthcare workers and respirator protection is a user seal check, a surrogate for respirator fit testing. There have been many arguments among the biosafety professionals whether seal check is sufficient and we do not need a respirator fit testing. So in this case, they have naive population, 600 plus, and they have 643 people who have never been fit tested before. And they use a quantitative method. First of all, this study group, they will use a respirator and then they perform seal check themselves. And those who believe that they fit nicely to that particular model, they were tested with a fit testing method, either the quantitative, and they are tested on both, the quantitative and qualitative. And they see that those who have passed they think the respirator provides a good seal by using user seal check. 75% pass the test using quantitative, Basically, it's validated, 86% pass. But let's look at how many fail. Around 14% to 25% fail. So they believe that their seal test, the seal check pass, but in actual fact, it cannot be validated. These are experienced respirator user and they have been fit tested before. They perform user seal check on their respirator and then they proceed with the quantitative testing and the qualitative testing. A whooping 30% of them actually fail, even though they thought their seal check suffice. And you will see that although qualitative is much easier and cheaper to perform, it shows that 22% of them actually fail the test. So this study basically is telling you that seal check is not enough and it cannot be used to replace respirator fit testing. This is my last slide. The respirator, the mask worn over respirator. This is the same case study again with what we have discussed with Facemask. Should the mask worn over respirator or respirator worn over mask? Which one is better? I do see that people wear a surgical mask over the respirator. I also have seen people who wears a mask over the respirator. So which one is actually better? This guy, you will see that he's wearing a surgical mask inside and then the respirator outside. If you understand now that respirator functions by providing a good seal, then the first layer of a surgical mask inside will break the seal for you. Regardless of the situation, there will be leakiness around this area and area. Okay, so number 2 is out. Respirator over a mask cannot be done. Mask worn over respirator. Like I mentioned before, if like the goggles scenario, if you need to wear a goggles, you need to be fit tested together with the respirator. So if you are going to put on something on top of your respirator, you should be fit tested again with this particular item. Both should not be done, in my opinion. In the manufacturer or NIOSH will also never ask you to put on a mask over the respirator for whatever reason. And the manufacturer will believe that when you put on a mask over the respirator, it actually press against the respirator, it deforms it, and it causes the leakiness. Okay. Currently, I don't find any scientific evidence of which one can be done, which one cannot be done. What I'm suggesting here, or this discussion, is based on the guidelines and the concepts of respirator fit testing. Okay, thank you. This QR code it will link you to a Google form. If you need e-certificate, please fill in through this QR code or this tiny CC link. This one will not work with your Unimas Now scanner. Okay. I would like to open the floor for discussion.
Dr. Tan, I have one question.
Hi, Angela.
The face shield that you mentioned earlier, is there any particular face shield model that is better than others? Because there are so many kinds and they have so many different price out there. Can you give us your opinion about that? Thank you.
Face shield, yes, it comes with many sizes. I don't think there's any science behind which one is better. I do find that the one with a sponge on your forehead, that one, it fogs a lot, but it channels the exhalation air downward and to the side, which is okay. Those that was 3D printed previously, if you remember, they have holes on top. That one, it allows air to escape upward. So if you have ejected or exhaled some infectious particles, it will go up, side, and down, which will increase the amount of aerosol that is lingering in the air. So I would suggest to use the one that without hole on the top. So whatever that you exhale out, it goes downward and minimally to the side. And it should be washed properly, because the issue with too many PPEs involved is how you take it off. And just now we mentioned about the electrostatic property of respirator and face mask. They attract and stick viruses, okay, using electrostatic energy. Similarly, the face shield is made from plastic, and it will have the property to absorb and attract virus particles. So it needs to be taken off and washed, decon properly. Otherwise, it's just another hazard to you. Any more questions? Okay, I see Sai Hui Hui in the chat box. Effectiveness compare double mask and KN94. You have to go back to one of my earlier slides on the size. Mask was the testing for mask uses mask it was validated on 3 microns particle. KN94 is using a particle that is much smaller at 0.3 microns. So double masking will have the 10 times pore size compared to KN94. It will never be able to compare. And mask will never give you a perfect seal. So even if you use the ASTM3 surgical mask, you will not be able to achieve the seal, okay? The bacterial filtration efficiency and whatever that you have, it will just be a number on paper. Some literature, if you look online, the studies shown that different type of mask or surgical mask, it will have the filtration efficiency between 10 to 80%, depending on the material, depending on the fitting on your face. Okay, if that answers your question, Hui Hui. The simple answer is double mask will never achieve anything near to KN94. If the KN94 is a real KN94, and try not to purchase respirator online because it's cheap. You purchase something through a proper vendor or from the pharmacy, that would be the best. Dr. Anita, seeing the importance of fitting the mask properly, how would you advise on masking for children? Masking for children, the very young children, they need smaller masks. And nowadays, we find a lot of masks available for children. It should fit. I don't have the, what do you call, perfect answer for this question. How to wash a face shield with sponge properly? Actually, face shield is a single-use item. In our biosafety training, if you want to follow SOP, the respirator, I'll stop sharing my screen. How to wash the face shield and sponge properly? Everything about biosafety is about disposal, a single use, and then you dispose. And if you want to wash it, I'm sure water with salt, it works fine, because if you just want to decontaminate the viral particle, salt, it works fine. Okay, and dry the sponge. The sponge also, it absorbs your facial oil, your sweat, so it needs to be washed properly. And after a few washes, it will just drop off. Effectiveness of wearing KF94 mask. KF94 would be the Korean filter 94. That is the Korean version. Is it? And another, Henrietta, you're asking similar question. KN95 and as effective as N95. Okay, if you are not able to do or get yourself fit tested, there's a 30% chance that none of these will fit you. And what happens when you purchase a respirator? This respirator is it's an N100 with a gasket. Okay, this one costs more than 50 ringgit per piece. If you don't get yourself fit tested, and it leaks when you use it, it leaks from the top rather than passing through the filter. Then what happens is you are paying 50 ringgit and wearing something equivalent to a face mask. Okay, KN95 is fit, or 94, I think it's KN94. Can't remember the actual number, but if it fits well, it performs the same, it will behave as effective as N95. Okay. Any other question? Face mask, fabric mask. Okay, I see Dr. Samira. If anybody is to go out to the public places, what would you advise to wear? What are the good combination? Face mask, fabric mask, respirator, and face shield. Okay, just now I mentioned about a single masking and then a double masking. And double mask is a single piece of surgical mask followed by a cloth mask that will increase the filtration efficiency. That will be a good combination. If you just want to put another bandana, it depends. It increases to 30% extra filtration efficiency or a gaiter. You also need to know how long you going to use it for. A lot of this study is done in cold climate countries where they don't sweat that much. So if I would say a single mask actually is sufficient. If you want extra protection, you put on the second layer of cloth mask, and if possible, you can use a face shield. Okay, this I think has been in the recommendation for it has been the recommendation by many authorities. If you want to use respirator, well, like I said, you need to understand the concept of fit testing. If it's not fitted and you don't really know whether it fits you well, there's a 30% chance that it will fail you and it behaves like a surgical mask rather than respirator. How to differentiate genuine KN95 and imitation brand? Colleagues in the US, they also have problem looking for genuine products. Like I mentioned, I think buying from a reputable source would be more beneficial, like big companies, but big pharmacies. That one would be better. Nolia, your question actually is very good. How effective is a cloth fabric mask after being washed few times? The issue with fabric and cloth mask is there is no standard. So unlike surgical mask that comes with a standard to follow for manufacturer to follow, cloth mask basically depends on what you put inside. The different layer of cloth, or whether you put silk, cotton combination, or polyester product. So it really depends. But if you have polyester products, then one way is I like a layer of polyester, something that attracts, or something that you know for sure comes with electrostatic property. That one attracts virus particles and improves filtration if you are talking about a single cloth mask. But after you wash it, normally the electrostatic charge will disappear. One way to recharge it is by using hair dryer. After you dry it, you just blast it with hair dryer for a while. It should be recharged, but there is no guarantee. Okay. Anything else? Okay, Anna, can you comment on the recycle use of masks in the public? Example, after we eat, we tend to reuse the mask that we put aside. The manufacturer said it's single use. And places with strict SOP, when it says single use, means if I put this on and then suddenly I need to take it off for whatever reason, this thing is as good as rubbish. Okay. Most of the time, we can get away with this by reusing because we are not infected. But if you are infected, you'll be handling this. You take it off, then some people will fold it and then put it elsewhere. When you fold like this and you open it, there's a sharp angle. And when you use it, there's a hole and air starts to escape. When you exhale, the air starts to escape from the top. That one becomes an issue. If you really need to reuse it, like say you put it in a paper bag, not a plastic bag. Otherwise, the moisture there will encourage bacteria and fungus to grow. So children going back to school, if they have air-conditioned classroom, probably this thing will last them longer, but they should change often after their meal time, 10 o'clock, the break time. I think the best way is throw away this and put on a new one. Because again, they are more than your exhaled air, your saliva, and a lot of facial oil, all these things, and it stinks. For hygiene purpose, not for COVID, but for hygiene purpose, it should be changed often. Any other questions? Zeti, your question is wearing a mask to protect the wearer or others. Surgical mask is designed to protect others from you. Okay. If you are infected and you wear this, the inside here is made from absorbent material. This is the colored area, which has water repellent property. The inside is probably cotton. It absorbs your saliva or whatever. When you put this on, when you talk, if you are infected, the aerosols, droplets, it get captured here. Okay, so surgical mask is designed to protect other people from you. If you are talking about a respirator, if it's a real respirator, then you inhale through the filter, you exhale through the filter. So it protects both sides. Okay. Can the virus or bacteria transfer from the face mask to anything that gets contact to it? It is possible. When you take off your mask, that's why they say this is a single-use thing. When you use a mask, when you take it off, do you see me touching the filter material? You touch the loop. You don't take it off and then start to touch all over. No. Okay. If that is the case, if you are positive, if I'm positive, when I take it off and then I start to touch the inside, then whatever that I exhale is already on my finger. Imagine me handling the doorknob, everything after that, if I don't wash my hand properly. So to discard respirator and surgical mask, after you use it, it's from your ear, from the ear loop, take it off, then straight into the bin. That is why I never encourage people to reuse their surgical mask. It's going to incur costs because you tend to spend more on that. Surgical mask inside, how to put surgical mask inside KF94 outside? Does it serve better than a cloth mask? Well, I think I covered that briefly just now. When you have a mask, a respirator, this is not a recommended because the fit depends on the strength of the loop here, the ear loop. If you put on another piece of this on top, and then it depresses the shape, it compresses the shape, it is possible that it peels the side off, then it leaks. Anything that you put on top of the respirator or it push against the respirator, it needs to be fit tested again. Double masking for school children, that is a good question. It also depends whether your children, they are in an air-conditioned room or just a fan, or sit at the side or the corner of the class without fan. Because we want to increase protection, but also we don't want them to pengsan halfway. So, and if you have the chance to buy a few different types of surgical masks, not medical masks, that you test it on yourself, you realize that the breathability is different. So if they're going to wear it for many hours, it's good to just invest in a better one. Test it out for yourself before you give it to your child. Okay. If non-medical grade mask, should we buy it? Non-medical grade mask is not certified to any standard. That means they have never tested the fabric material against any bacteria. They don't test whether it actually stops bacteria at certain concentration to penetrate through. They don't test it on anything. It's the melt-blown fabric. They cut it, stamp it, put the loop, and then sell it to you. You can buy it. It's probably 10 ringgit per box of 50. If you are going to, at the beginning of the pandemic, there's no stock. So I settled with one box of Chinese made, and that time it was 50 ringgit. Now I see the price 9.90 for medical grade. It is okay, you can use it, but the breathability is different. After I purchased something that is with ASTM certified surgical mask, I realized that the breathability is different. It's more breathable, so I can use it longer without feeling fatigue. Okay, if breathability is good, that means when you put on the mask and then you put you put on the respirator, so the mask, you try to exhale, you can actually feel the air coming up from here, not from top or the side. So that is breathable. Some of the medical is not really breathable. Cloth mask, we put a piece of tissue inside. Well, there is no science behind it. I cannot recommend. But I know you're trying to reduce washing, I think. So it's better just to use the mask as it is. There are some literatures teaching people how to make mask, a good mask. That is important. A single layer cotton mask, it doesn't work really well. A 3-layer mask with different material, it works better. Difference between medical and surgical mask. I also mentioned this just now. The medical grade mask and the surgical grade mask. Surgical mask is regulated. Medical mask is not regulated. Okay, there is no certification, whatever. So when they want to use the name, the label surgical, they must conform to at least the ASTM 123 standard. So medical is lower grade. It's not controlled. Surgical mask inside. Okay, the surgical, probably you missed, I think you missed. If you put a surgical mask, and then you put on a respirator, where are you breathing through? The important thing about respirator is a seal. This thing will not offer you a seal. It's a no. It's a straight no. Okay? If when you use a N95 respirator, you don't use anything else. It itself is enough. The more things that you put in between or outside the respirator, it affects fit. Okay? I know there is during the 2009 influenza pandemic, the recommendation came out about putting respirator and then the respirator inside and then a layer of surgical mask outside to prolong the lifespan. But I cannot find anybody doing any research showing that this is good, it's a good practice or not. So it's a recommendation without evidence. It's safe to wear face mask while sleeping, especially if you're infected and living with somebody in the same room. Well, if that is an interesting question. It depends on the type of mask. A good mask is really breathable. You won't suffocate. A single layer should be okay. What else? Okay. Any more question? Otherwise, we'll conclude the webinar. When you see fogging on the glasses, does it mean it's not fit? I would say it doesn't fit. There's a fitting issue. One telltale sign of a leaking respirator or surgical mask is when you exhale hard, when you do the fit test, the seal check, you put on your mask and then you exhale, your spectacles fog. That one, it means the air escaped from the nose area. Okay. If it escapes through the filter material, then it won't fog. The medical mask that is unregulated will normally cause more fogging because it is really not breathable. It's very plasticky. For those not from Unimas and you need a e-cert for evidence, then you can use this. You can scan this QR code using a normal QR scanner and fill in a short questionnaire, and I can send you an e-certificate letter. I'll keep it valid until 4. One last question before we end. Okay, I think no more question. We'll end the session now. Okay, admin, okay. Once after you talk in, you can log out. It's the end of the session. Thank you.